students, I am your course instructor Professor Anisa Shikalgar. Here we are with the second example of the ambiguous grammar. So in that particular example we can see here three production rules are given. E produces E plus E produces E star E produces ID, and the string to be generated is given ID plus ID star ID. Okay, so the question will be identify whether the given grammar is ambiguous or not, and if the given grammar is ambiguous then remove its ambiguity. So in today's video we are going to see how to remove the ambiguity also. Okay, so first we'll see whether the given grammar is ambiguous or not. So suppose here I am using the leftmost derivation first way. So suppose E produces E plus E. We are going to start with particular production rule. As it is the leftmost derivation, we are going to replace that particular E. So that E will be directly replaced by ID plus E. Then this E will be replaced by here E star E. Now every E will be replaced one by one by ID. Okay, so here we have generated the string ID plus ID star ID. Now I am to find second way of the same leftmost derivation. Okay, so here if we start with E produces E star E, then first that E will be replaced by E plus E. Then each and every E, one by one, only we are replacing the leftmost non-terminal ID plus E star E, then ID plus ID star E, and ID plus ID star ID. So here it is the another way by using the leftmost derivation, so that here we can give the conclusion that the given grammar is ambiguous grammar. Okay, now the main part is the same example we have seen in the previous video also, whether to find whether given grammar is ambiguous or not. Then here we are going to remove the ambiguity of the particular grammar. So here if we can observe that particular production rules, here we can see E produces E plus E produces E star E, and again E produces ID. So the same variable is repeating. Okay, so one of the way to remove the ambiguity of the grammar is to assign separate non-terminal. So here I am writing that particular sentence, assign separate non-terminal to avoid the repetition. So here to avoid the repetitions, here the same non-terminal is repeated. So to avoid that particular repetitions, what we are going to do, we are going to assign this separate non-terminal, so that whatever the grammar we will obtain, that will not be ambiguous grammar. See here students, so E produces E, one time we are using that particular non-terminal. So instead of the same non-terminal we are using here, we are using the another non-terminal. Means we are assigning the different non-terminals. So E produces E plus T, or it can produces T, because that particular E should be also replaced by T. Okay. Then the next is the same variable we are using, T produces, here it is T star, again one time we are using that particular non-terminal, then use another T star F, then F produces ID. So in that particular grammar, not a single non-terminal is repeated. We have used every time the separate non-terminal. Then now I can say that it is ambiguous grammar or not. For that particular, again we will try to find the different ways. So here suppose again I am using the leftmost derivation. So for that particular, suppose here we are using E produces, suppose E plus T. E produces E plus T. So that particular E, it can be replaced by T. The string to be generated is ID plus ID and star ID. Therefore, E produces, that E, either it can be replaced by E plus T or it can be replaced by T. There is only two production rules. So here, if I replace that particular by T, then T plus T. We will see how we can obtain the particular string. So suppose again E, it can be replaced by here T plus T. That plus sign we want. So here first we replace that T by F plus as it is, and we will replace, write here T, and then we can replace first F by ID as it is the leftmost derivation. At a one time we can replace only one symbol, plus that T can be now replaced T star F. Then E, it can be replaced by ID plus that T will be replaced by F, and now every F can be replaced by ID plus ID star F, and E, it can be replaced by ID plus ID star ID. So here we have obtained one particular way to derive the string ID plus ID star ID. So if I can observe whether I have any another way by using same leftmost derivation. So here only we can start with that particular rule, E produces E plus T. Okay. So here suppose I am using the another way, E produces E plus T. So the students, what is the next production rule? Instead of that, can I use any another rule? So E produces E plus T or T. Suppose that E, it can be replaced by E plus T. So here it will becomes E plus T plus T. So no need of two plus operators. Okay. Then in the second also I must use that particular rule which I have used here. Okay. So suppose here also we use that T plus T. At least after that, can I use any different rule? Here E produces, that T is replaced by F. So instead of F, if I replace T star F. So here if that can be replaced by T star F, T star F. So what it becomes? First star operation comes, then plus operator comes. Okay. But in the particular string, first we want plus and then star. So here what we have observed, there is no any another way to derive the same string ID plus ID star ID. Only single way is present when we have removed the ambiguity by assigning the separate non-terminal. So here that grammar which we have obtained by assigning the separate non-terminal is purely unambiguous grammar. So here students, in that particular video we have seen the example of the ambiguous grammar. One example is given. We find that one way by using leftmost derivation, another way is also present. So we have concluded the given grammar is ambiguous grammar. The another task given is to remove the ambiguity. So how to remove the ambiguity? Assign separate non-terminals to avoid the repetition. So here we have assigned T and F, these two separate non-terminal. Instead of using capital E, same letters repeatedly. So here after assigning the separate non-terminal, we are at the conclusion that there is only single leftmost derivation present to derive the string ID plus ID star ID. Therefore here the obtained grammar is purely unambiguous grammar. So in the next lecture we will see the another example of the ambiguous grammar. Thank you students.